Welcome to the very first episode of Inspired By, the show that's bringing you inspiring stories from inspiring entrepreneurs. Now, I am really excited to kick off this incredible show by introducing you to what it's all about. As you join me every single week now, we're going to be introducing you to inspiring celebrities, inspiring experts, and guests who are going to share with you the real story. Because I believe that every single person on this planet has an inspiring story, but most people haven't shared them yet. Not because they don't want to or they don't think it's valuable, but because they haven't been asked the right questions and they haven't actually been asked to share it. So my job on this show is to be asking the real questions so that you can get the real answers. And that's why this show exists. This is why I've been so excited, sat in the studio here today recording this first episode, because I want you to be inspired by people so that ultimately you can go on to inspire others. Now, maybe you're watching this right now because you would love to get a bit of inspiration every day. Maybe you're in the rat race, stepping one foot in front of the other, and you just find yourself getting a little bit bored with what's around you. Or maybe you've got a big vision you want to achieve, but you're just not quite sure how to get there yet. Maybe you attend all these courses, you buy lots of online programs, you read loads of books, but you're just still not finding that information is going anywhere. Well, my goal on this show is for you to get more inspiration than you do information, and more importantly, the real stuff. Because what I found as I started my journey back in 2017, I started building my business and building my brand, but I was trying to do it as somebody I wasn't. I don't know if anyone can recognize this and relate to this, but for many of us, when we're in our lives, we often find that we're doing things that we think we should be doing, not actually the things that resonate with us. And for me, that happened throughout most of my life until very recently I realized that as soon as you start being more yourself, that's when the game really becomes quite fun. And so as we go through these interviews on the show, I'm going to be bringing you guests, exciting people for you to meet, and more importantly, hear the real shit, hear the real stuff that many of them haven't yet shared. Not because they don't want to, but because they haven't been asked yet. And that's my job. My job is to be asking the right questions. So I'm really excited to welcome you to the concept of the show. Now, if you're watching this for the very first time, you haven't come across me before, let me ask you a question. Have you ever had a time in your life where you think everything's going well, but suddenly something happens and it turns your world completely upside down? Well, for me, that happened back in 2015. I was working in the corporate world and I did everything right. I was doing what I was told to be doing. I left school, studied, became a chartered accountant, and life was great. And I say that with sarcasm. I thought it was great, but in reality, it wasn't what I wanted it to be. I had pushed my way through the corporate world. I'd become a director at the age of 24 of a global accountancy firm. And I just didn't feel like myself. I was pushing. And I'd always been a bit of a high achiever. You can probably tell by even my enthusiasm in telling you the story. But I just didn't feel like I was really making myself happy. I was doing what everyone had told me to do. I got a good job, got a good relationship, bought a nice house, started planning my family. And back in 2015, it all came crumbling down. Not because I walked away, not because I left a relationship, but because I'd been really, really unwell for a very long time and had no idea about it. I was sat in a doctor's because I'd been feeling sick. And back then I'd been driven so much that I wasn't really sleeping and eating very well. So between us, I just thought I was sick. I thought I had a stomach bug. And after chatting to the doctor, in just 10 minutes, she diagnosed me with severe clinical depression. And what happened in that room, whilst I'd been in denial, it was like I'd been hit by a ton of bricks. Everything I thought I'd built, everything I thought I knew about myself, everything I thought I'd achieved came crumbling down because I had lost myself on the journey. I'd been working really hard at building this dream life that I was told I needed. And every single step I took building it was a step in the wrong direction as being who I really needed to be. And I'd lost myself on the journey. And that decision, that moment, that career pushing and that compromise in losing myself cost me 6 months of being unwell. I was signed off sick and diagnosed for 6 whole months where I could hardly leave my flat. I'd lost myself even more. I'd completely questioned who I was. I couldn't work, could hardly eat. The thought of even getting out of bed most days was really, really challenging. And for someone who'd never, ever experienced any sort of mental illness, it was totally unknown to me. And in that moment, I realized that my life was not worth living if I was going to go back into the same rat race and the same process. And I don't know if any of you can relate to this or this has ever happened to you. I had a serious light bulb moment and a realization where I was like, this cannot be the way I need to live my life. This isn't me. And so when I came out of my depression and I went through all the therapy and the medication and everything that I was recommended to do, I had this new lease of life. And I found out that when I was going back into the corporate world, my job didn't even exist anymore. They'd replaced me. They didn't need me anymore. And so I was at a crossroads. I had two options. One, go back into the corporate world, find another job and just keep going back into what I was doing before. Or number two, live on financial support, focus on getting paid being sick, and just focus on getting better myself. And to be honest with you, when I looked at those two options, after this new feeling and this new me that I'd found, neither of them felt like me. And so I decided there and then to create a third option. And that was to find my own new path. And I decided to start my own business. Now, full transparency in big text and disclaimer above this, I would not recommend starting a business while being diagnosed with severe clinical depression. It was not the smartest move I ever made. And I think it's safe to say my friends, my family, everyone I knew pretty much in some way, shape or form told me the same thing. But did I listen? Nope. Am I glad I didn't listen? Abso-freaking-lutely. It wasn't the best thing for me at the time, but I pushed through and I got some incredible results with it. So I'd started building my business and things were great. I was getting paying clients. I was having the digital nomad lifestyle. I was traveling around Australia. I was working when I wanted, getting paid what I wanted, and things were great. But what I found was as I was growing my business, I was coaching, I was mentoring, I had online courses. I was known as the authority queen, building people's businesses online with them. And I started getting noticed. I started getting brand awareness. I started getting people knowing who I was. And it really felt great. But as I did that and my brand started getting bigger and people started noticing me, I started noticing that I started not being myself again. Because I had mentors and people telling me to say, Chloe, you can't say that on camera. No, you can't say that on stage. That will make you look damaged. People won't invest in you if they know about your depression because they'll look like you're broken. People won't take you seriously. You can't say this, you can't say this, and you have to say this, and you have to say this. And back then, all those years ago, I thought that was what was normal. I thought, they've got the result, they're telling me to do it that way, I'll do it the same. But what really happened in reality was, it wasn't true. And I was being something that I wasn't. I'd put on this mask that I thought I had to put on, and actually, in fact, that wasn't who I was. Have you ever time in your life where you put on a mask that you then realize isn't who you really are? And the minute I took off that mask, the minute the lies disappeared, the minute the person I thought I had to be vanished, was when it truly all hit in for me. That's when the game started becoming fun, and being on podcasts, being on shows, being on TV, being on radio, being on magazine covers, being on stages felt like fun, because for the first time in my life ever, I felt like I could really be myself and tell my real story. And the reason I'm telling you this now is by telling my story on these incredible platforms, I got to meet some amazing people. I got to speak to celebrities, experts, guests that I used to see on TV and never even imagine meeting face to face. And there was one really important thing that I noticed when I met all these people. The people you see on TV and on stage are not always the real them. Now, I'm not telling you that they're lying or pretending to be something else. They're just showing one version of who they are. But when I was behind stage and in the green rooms and in the studios like this, I was sat there chatting to them with a cup of coffee, asking them questions. And I noticed that the person I was chatting to behind the scenes wasn't the person they were showing up as on stage, in the public, in front of people. They were just being them, sat there relaxed. And I got to ask some really cool, incredible questions, because I don't know if any of you guys are like this, but the minute I see people I've always wanted to meet, that was when the game changed. I was like, oh my God, can I ask you this question? What have you done about this? How did you get that? What happened there? Was it really like that? And one incredible thing happened on that journey. Every single person I spoke to said a really powerful thing to me. Chloe, that's really interesting. No one's ever asked me that before. Or, that's really interesting. I've never been told that story before. Or, I've never shared that before. That's really weird. And what I found was people started telling me things that they'd never told before. People started sharing stories that they'd never shared before. And as I was sat there in the informal setting asking these questions, I had this incredible idea. What if I asked them questions like this on a sofa with a microphone, with a camera? What if I could ask these questions in front of people like yourselves, listening or watching this from the comfort of your home, so that you can also be incredibly inspired by these amazing people like I was? And that's where Inspired By was born. So I've been really excited to introduce some incredible people, to meet some amazing people, to interview people all over the world on massive stages. And now I'm really excited to bring that to the comfort of your home using Inspired By. So over these course of these few episodes, I'm going to be introducing you to incredible celebrities, incredible guests, incredible experts who you've probably always thought you knew, but I'm going to share with you a different side to them. I'm going to give them the opportunity to share the real them. I'm going to ask them the real questions so you can get the real answers. And that is why Inspired By is here. So if you are up for coming on this journey with us, if you want to learn more and you want to find out the real people so ultimately you can be inspired, if you are watching this on our YouTube channel or you're listening to it on any of the usual audio platforms, do make sure you subscribe to the show. You do not want to miss out on the incredible people we have lined up for the show. And obviously, do make sure you leave a comment on the sites where you can comment, on our YouTube channel or on Instagram, social media. Share with us, what are you most excited by for this show? What are you most excited by being inspired by? Because I'm so excited to bring you these people, and I'm sure you're as equally as excited to hear from them. So that's all for now. Hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and I'll see you next week for our next show.